Welcome to the Purple Political Breakdown. I believe for the most part that for the this is like not aliens for sure. I think for the most part this is probably technology that the government doesn't want the people to know about. And we'll talk about whether that's good or bad in a second. And I think the whistleblower and I don't know about the naval commander, but I do think that they could be potentially a way to make people kind of, I'm going to say it, distracted.
Yeah, it would like fundamentally cause major rifts in religious apparatuses. Would cause massive civil conflict in parts of like the Arab world, I think.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here on the podcast, of course. And did I forget to change the title? I think I did forget to change the title for this. Well, for the most part, we're back at it again. Episode number 36. We're kind of winging it today. A lot of plans kind of get rescheduled a little bit, but there's a lot to talk about nonetheless. With that said, I'm your boy, your host, Riddell Lewis, here with my co-hosts, Jonathan and Paul. How you guys doing today?
Very well.
Oh yeah, I'm doing great.
All right, excellent, excellent. So let's get started off with the what you need to know. What is going on in the world today? Some interesting things that may or may not appeal to you guys out there. For one, there's some kind of looming pressure of an impeachment of our Paul's man here, Joe Biden, in the works. So
No, Joseph R. Biden.
Joseph
As
R.
Paul
Thank you.
calls him.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. Of course, Hunter Biden and his plea deal that's going on because he's a great guy. We all know. The UPS union deal as the UPS tries to increase their minimum wage. From what I saw, in terms of the part-time jobs, at least they want to change it from $16 to $21 minimum wage. So
It's not enough. Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
Hey, definitely if you want a job, UPS driving, hey, that might be it. That might be it right there. And of course, the education department has opened a civil rights investigation into Harvard's legacy admissions. So, another thing in reference to choosing certain types of people and joining colleges, we got rid of affirmative action. Is legacy admissions next? Who knows? Who knows? So, what do y'all think about what's going on in society right now?
For the UPS thing, I'm pretty disappointed. The union needs to push a lot harder, and they need to get AC in the vans. I still cannot believe that they fell through on that demand. Like, it's absolutely crazy. They still haven't actually consolidated the pension fund yet either. They still haven't protected some of these like older workers and stuff like that. Like all of a sudden they just like came out for these new people. It's kind of like UPS has run the union or something like that. It was crazy reading it. I don't know if you guys have read the demands yet, but they've conceded. So hopefully the union does not vote in favor. I don't think it will because the trucks was such a big issue with the summer heat. UPS has lost around 15 workers in the last year to heat exhaustion. And it's just like absolutely incredible. And it's something that should go off or should just like definitely be tackled for sure. For the legacy admissions thing, look, hey, I say let the heads roll, right? Send the suits in and get it done, right? That's pretty messed up. I mean, it should be the merit. If we're going to get rid of affirmative action, then we're going to have to embrace that meritocratic system. And that legacy admission thing is far from it.
All right, all right. I would definitely say at the very least, AC should be like a must in a lot of these places, especially with the heat wave stuff going on. With it getting even hotter in a lot of these places, so it's it should be kind of basic. What
They've promised it. They've promised it for their cars going into 2024 for newer developed ones. But let's say, for example, you're out in like a flyover state town or something like that isn't going to have the new intake of the vehicles. You're still going to be operating these things, right? And as a result of that, it's just disappointing because this is like one of the most major things that the union should fight for. Not just benefits, but quality of life in the workspace is just so important. I'm very happy they made somehow these concessions for the pay rate, for the pay raise for the part-timers, right? But the reality is, always remember this, the majority of people that work at UPS are full-time, right?
Yeah.
And this is absolutely disappointing from the union perspective. And I hope that it gets shot down and they keep pushing. They just got to choke this company out. But that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I definitely feel you. I actually had one episode where we talked all about unions. We had a union person who was a part of unions. I think he wrote a book about unions, and then a Starbucks worker who was working with him that was also part of a Starbucks union. And I forgot to record the audio, and I lost that episode. So, just L host over here who just be losing some great material. Another episode I lost was about a Texas attorney was talking about how we should jail misdemeanors, and we were talking about that conversation, how people who have misdemeanors should have bigger punishments. No, I think he didn't want to jail him, or no, I think he did. I think he did want to jail him. So that was a conversation we were having, and that episode is lost as well. So I lost 3 episodes, ladies and gentlemen. It's just gone in the archives. I know,
You gotta.
it's just so bad.
You might need to find a better system.
I just forget to unmute the mics. That's my problem. It's not even a system problem. It's just I forget to unmute the mics.
Well, I'm saying the system that I use for my personal podcast, you don't have to unmute the mics. It does automatically when you press record.
See, you're better than me. That's all I can say about that. But with that said, let's dive into our topic, the starting topic. We don't know how long we'll be on here, but it's an interesting conversation, especially with 2 religious individuals here, and that is aliens. Recently, there was a hearing that went on where a couple of individuals were talking about UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, as I believe what the acronym stands for. And from what I saw, the 3 individuals that showed up for the hearing that were pleading their case was a naval commander, was someone that is in the UAP division in the government, I believe, and someone a part of this kind of organization called Safe Aerospace. And he was like the CEO for that company, talking about how we should have, good protection, safe protection, what is going on in our skies. And they're pleading their case that UAPs, UFOs, aliens, ladies and gentlemen, exist. What do y'all think?
Fake.
Real.
Terrible. No, aliens aren't real.
Oh.
They're not real. The only argument that people have for aliens is space is really, really big. Therefore, they must exist. To which I say, that's hooey.
There's got to be something out there, man. I'm telling you.
Agreed,
Yeah,
bro.
see?
It's so big,
It's-
man.
no,
it's
it's-
infinite.
who
It's
cares?
infinitely big,
Who
bro.
cares? Who cares? So I'm actually, I don't I'm not one of the people who's aliens can't be real because of XYZ or whatever. I don't think, because a lot of Christians will either go one of 2 ways with it. They'll go oh, aliens aren't real because for some reason that would disprove God, or aliens must be real because of some, they sometimes they'll take the track because God created a big universe and so he created everything inside the universe. But others will take the approach that I generally take, and it's yeah, sure, you can call them aliens if you want, but I do believe in angels and demons, obviously. And I look at it as what is the criteria of what somebody would consider an alien? Something that's not of this world, something that through technology or some other means we can't always see them or know that they're here. And they're usually here for either our benefit or for our injury. And so they're either here to destroy us or here to help us or whatever. And that's the same definitions of angels and demons. They're beings not of this world that we can't really see. We can't really know for sure, through physical senses, that they're here all the time. Sometimes we can. And they're either here for our good, like angels, or here for to do us harm, like demons. And so I'd say, yeah, if you want to call those aliens, you can. As for legitimate aliens that are creatures of another planet, I think that probably not, but I think if there are aliens out there, that doesn't so what? I don't get it. I don't get the appeal.
We've got to talk to them, man. I'm telling you, it's to
To do what? How will we even be able to talk to them?
Technology to defeat the communists, bro. All
right, well then I'm on board. If it's to defeat the communists, then I'm on board.
I
Like
mean,
imagine like a UFO flying over Beijing and picking Xi Jinping up into the air, bro. Like, come on.
to be fair, the aliens may just be communists, low key. Like,
Oh God.
from all the stories we see, all we know is that the aliens like to take over the country and take over the world. Matter of fact, take over the world and rule on with an iron fist. So they may side with China, bro. They might side with China. It's like
Yeah, it's like, have you
democracy.
seen the
Yeah,
Twilight
right.
Zone episode To Serve Man? There's a
No.
Twilight Zone episode that's called To Serve Man, where aliens come down, and they say, "Oh, we're here to serve man," and all they do is like turn us into a communist utopia. But then at the end of the episode, they just abduct all these humans to bring them back for experimentation, and it's like plot twist: the aliens are communists and they hate us and they want to
Mm.
experiment on us.
So the big selling point, so I didn't see all of the hearing to be fair, but I saw a good chunk of the hearing, and from what I was hearing for the most part is a lot of confirmation bias without any evidence, which was like this is not moving me. I'm not one of those people who's oh, it came from a Navy commander, so I'm gonna believe everything you said. No, I'm not gonna believe everything you say just because you say it. So they're saying things like they found bodies where it was non-human. They were saying that we saw technology in the skies and that most cases of UFOs or UAPs in the skies were by pilots. And one of the biggest reasons why this technology isn't human, one of the people said, was that because it had the capability of being stationary in the sky, especially in high volatile winds like a hurricane or just high winds in general. And then it was able to, on a dime, reach speeds of sound. So it was able to reach high speeds in an instant. So this couldn't be man-made technology, which was one of the cases from, like, I think it was the naval commander who said this. So they were saying things like this. Obviously, from a layman, from a person who's just listening or watching this, they hear this, they got the title, they got the credibility of where they came from. It's obviously gonna sound good. It's gonna make you think about something. My thing, I'll kind of reveal my personal thoughts about it a bit later, but I guess I'm gonna ask you guys first. What do you guys think about these like important officials saying this type of information?
So I
Yeah,
think that the USN guy is the most credible because his account only is based off of the aerodynamics of the tic tac that was seen. Right now, for the other gentleman on the far left, I still believe him, but the guy that reported non-human biologics is though, and the one that went to Newsweek, I think it was, and spoke to them and did like an interview with them. Besides going to proper channels, right? And also being unable to testify that he has actually faced real deal reprisals for doing this makes me believe that there might not be non-human biologics whatsoever.
So I'm definitely with you with that. I think he said he was part of an Air Force division that specifically was researching UAPs. So I think that's where he said his credibility lies from. My thing, from my personal point of view, is it's really hard for me to believe this, obviously, especially when you think about aliens coming to Earth, because when you think about something like that, they would have to travel, light years to reach our planet, right? We don't really know many planets, very few planets that we can even hypothetically say have life on said planet. And any of those planets we deem capable potentially are light years beyond light years away. And if you don't know what a light year is, let's just say no human is going to be able to live throughout that time. A light year is extremely far away. I'm not going to go into the math because most people won't understand what I'm talking about. So,
well, it's the time that light can travel in 1 year, right? And so, I mean, a ray of light can travel around the Earth 6 times in the blink of an eye. So that's how fast light goes. So it's the time that a light beam takes um, to travel 1 year. So multiple light years is,
yeah,
well outside of the length in which humans can exist.
I still don't know if they can conceptualize. I think the best way for them to conceptualize it is if I had like a proper distance, like do you know, would anybody here know like the distance from the Pluto to like, or let's just say Jupiter to Earth. I don't even know how many.
I don't.
Yeah, I
It's
can.
hundreds of millions of miles, hundreds of millions.
I don't even know if that's a light year necessarily.
It's
But
not.
yeah, so it's really hard to
The close.
conceptualize. Oh, go ahead. Were you about to say
Never
something?
mind. Never mind. It's fine.
No, no worries. But Jonathan said it on the money in terms of what a light year is. It's the how far light can travel in a year. But that's why when it comes down to anything being the speed of light from what we know of, nothing with mass technically can be the speed of light. So these aliens would have to create technology that was able to kind of break down the mass to be equivalent to a photon. So maybe it's possible. Maybe an alien can create that technology, but then why would an alien create that technology, show up to Earth, and then lose to some like missile? Like it doesn't really make sense to me. So it's hard for me to believe it, considering how advanced
I think
technology
there's.
that would be.
Yeah, I think there's several, problems with this. I mean, science has shown so thoroughly, and typically the liberals will bring up how fallible like human vision and memory is. There's some several very good, very good, highly recommend TED talks on eyewitness testimony, and the liberals typically like to bring up, especially when it comes to criminological issues and like prison reforms and jail reforms, stuff like that, like, oh, a lot of these people were arrested based on strictly human testimony, which is so bad and so fallible, which it is. But then as soon as like there's aliens, it's like, oh, well, aliens are involved. Oh, that means this one person's eyewitness testimony is the most credible thing on the planet
I
because
don't
he saw it.
even, Jonathan. I'm gonna be honest. I low key think this is more of a conservative thing than a liberal thing. I feel like
Really? I
conservatives
think
believe in it more than liberals.
I don't think so.
Paul, what do you think?
I
I
actually
think
got to agree with Jonathan here.
You think
The
liberals
liter-
believe
it's
in?
very
the
it's a
left
very liberal thing.
the leftists are the ones that are saying it's not real because they're saying that it's distracting from class war. That's like the narrative they say all the time, right? Like all the leftists I know on Twitter and stuff like that, we're all saying, "Oh, look, like they're just doing this so they can amp up a war with the Iranians or something like that,"
No, I
right?
think Jonathan's saying left. Wait, let me
No, no,
ask you.
like the conservatives are the skeptics of it, right?
Yeah.
It
I
it
think
is
he's
not the
saying
liberals
Paul's
are the
saying
buying
right
ones.
now particularly,
Yeah.
people I think of all sides are saying, well, they're distracting us from something else. I think by and large liberals are the ones that buy into aliens
Yeah,
being real.
of course.
So I guess where I'm coming from
The
is the aspect of the government is hiding something is where I believe is more of a side on the right, because a lot of the
Oh,
sentiment is the
sure.
government is
Yeah.
hiding information from the people. And I guess it's not necessarily an alien thing, but the fact that there may be technology or knowledge that they have that they just won't reveal to the people is kind of where I'm coming
That's what
from.
I think. If big if the like sightings of the Tic Tac thing in the sky flying away we're moving, um, if those are real, what's to say that that's not? I mean, I think it's a very hilarious time right now that they're bringing out this news at the same time that Oppenheimer was released, which was a very high priority, top secret scientific discovery that nobody knew that we had anything near this kind of technology. There was rumblings in the intelligence community that got over to Stalin and Hitler like a couple months, maybe a year before it was actually done, that it was being done, but by and large the public had no idea. And then all of a sudden this huge technology was revealed that literally changed the course of history forever. And at the same time they're doing things on aliens, like, well, we know time and time again that the government does very shady things with very highly extremely advanced technology that they don't tell us about. I mean, look at one that everybody agrees on is horrible, like MK Ultra. Like nobody knew that kind of technology was even available or possibly to be done. The being able to essentially mind control people, like nobody thought that was a possibility. And then years and years later, that technology got out, and everyone's like, "Oh, this was a legitimate thing." Like, no, even if the Tic Tac flying thing existed, that doesn't mean an alien. It just means the government's doing what the government has always done. And
Before
there's my
Paul,
rant.
no, because I actually want to dive into that deeper because I think a deeper conversation can be had in terms of what what should the government be telling people? And I think that is actually a bigger conversation. But Paul, before you leave, my only question for you is: if aliens did exist, would that change society?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it would like fundamentally cause major rifts in religious apparatuses. Would cause massive civil conflict in parts of like the Arab world, I think, amongst many other areas. Yeah, like
Do you
there
think?
would be a very large, there'd be a very large attempt to censor the information. I think. Yeah.
Do you think net positive or net negative?
Um, well, I have a commitment to truth, right? And if that was there, then I would just say, well, God created them too. And I would continue to move on. Yeah, like it wouldn't hurt me, but sure, I think that it would be a net positive to sciences, and to our understanding of the universe as well. Now, as to what we should do with the aliens, we should dissect them and and treat them absolutely inhumanely. I'm just gonna be real. Like, I'm gonna vote Republican for the rest of my life if liberals start like voting for alien rights. Okay, like it's not gonna happen. Like when I watch Avatar, I say, dude, why are we watching like these insurgents like kill all these innocent humans? Like this is crazy. This is
Oh
wild.
man, this is a conversation. Oh,
Yeah, dude.
conversation in the future, because that bleeds into sentience, and that doesn't only go to aliens. That goes to sentient AI. That goes to animals. Oh, that's a
Yeah.
conversation
AI can't be sentient.
Yeah.
for now.
Takes the breath of God.
True.
No.
Oh man, this is a conversation, and I just to be devil's advocate, I will be devil's advocate for that conversation for sure. Um, but that's an interesting conversation for the future. I definitely think so. In terms of this, the situation regarding the aliens, I'm kind of with you, Jonathan, in the sense that I believe for the most part that this is like not aliens for sure. I think for the most part this is probably technology that the government doesn't want the people to know about. And we'll talk about whether that's good or bad in a second. And I think the whistleblower, and I don't know about the naval commander, but I do think that they could be potentially a way to make people kind of, I'm going to say it, distracted from what is truly going on. Not necessarily about the Iran stuff or whatever the conservatives are talking about, but more
Not
so well, more so trying to kind of get them thinking a different idea instead of thinking that the government has technology. Which a lot of people will believe. A lot of people are more than willing to believe in aliens, more than want to believe in aliens, because there's the want of something being bigger than ourselves in the universe, and this potential hearing and distraction is a good way to do it. Honestly, it's a smart tactic to fool the people. So I guess it is what it is for the most part. I guess my question for you guys, and we'll go into this conversation: should the government kind of reveal this type of information to the people in the first place if they have advanced technology that could change the course of war and the world in general? Is this information that the public needs to know?
I'm going to say something and I'm going to have to go. I think it is wholly dependent upon the situations available to us, right? I think though here's like the big tuna, I guess. If Congress catches a whiff of it, then the people ought to know, right? That's like my number one rule. I'll reach across the aisle here. I'll congratulate Congressman Gates for asking the most important question, which was, why hasn't Congress gotten this report yet? And it's absolutely true, right? Like the reports they were talking about were withheld under. Remember, like, we're taking this guy as word under oath and whatnot, right? Obviously he can go to jail for a long time if he's lying, but if it's true, Congress and the American people got held back on it, and they had a whiff of this entire information, and because of that, I believe someone's going to need to go to jail. But yeah, I do believe that if Congress catches a whiff of its existence, unless it's like wartime, then sure. But anyway, it was nice talking to you guys. I got to go though. All right.
No worries, no worries.
See you.
Take care, Paul.
So Paul's kind of sentiment was that if Congress knows, and I think there's some intrigue behind that because the Congress is supposed to kind of represent the people more so than any other branch for obvious reasons. They're the only ones that is like uh, voted, by the people, especially in their local area, with the state representatives, of course. So there's something to that, but I just unsure because we got a pretty good idea. Me, you, and Paul, we have a pretty good idea of how people are. Even people who are supposed to ideologically follow in line with our own personal beliefs, we understand that some people are just not capable of certain
Moral
types of
fiber.
knowledge. What were you about to say?
Oh, that too. I said people a lot of times aren't capable of moral fiber.
That
Like
that as
actually,
well.
it's actually like this is one of my problems with a lot of the Republicans voted offices. Every time it comes down to it, they don't vote Republican. They vote with the Democrats. It's like if I wanted a Democrat in office, I would have voted a Democrat. So, but there's also that as well. A lot of people just simply don't have the wherewithal to understand certain things.
Yeah, and Paul brought up a great point. If aliens did exist, the one potential fallback, one potential negative, is that religious institutions would fall completely apart. And I do think it would be wise if you're
I
religious
think
to
some of them
kind
would.
in terms of the world as whole, I would say most of them would. I would say a good number that probably would survive. I think Christianity would probably be the strongest in surviving. Um, but I would say a lot of the other religious institutions probably won't because I just don't know how they would deal with the alien aspect. Because like Paul, what he said God created the aliens too. Is what Paul would say for like God, and from my understanding of like Christianity, God is the almighty creator of everything. I just don't know if the other like religious institutions would be able to handle something like that because a lot of their kind of religions, from my understanding, are a lot more intricate in terms of when it comes to this creation stuff. So I could be wrong, but I only know what I know. You feel me? So
No, I think that's actually true. I think I was actually looking for the Bible on hand. Fortunately, it's across the room. But you know, I have a really funny story about aliens. I guess you could say, based on my belief of aliens. So, my my girlfriend, when I met her parents, like typically you'd think like when you meet someone's parents, they're like, oh, what are your intentions with my daughter? Like, tell me about yourself. That sort of thing. Like maybe if depending on where they're brought up, they have like a shotgun in their lap, and then they're like, oh, tell me about yourself. But so no joke, I came in, I shook hands, said hi, my name's Jonathan, blah blah blah. They sat me down, we got dinner, and her father starts out and says, "So tell me about the Genesis. What are your thoughts about the Genesis 6 account?" And the Genesis 6 account in the Bible is the one where it talks about the Nephilim, which is what I would consider aliens, and it says the sons of man the sons of God came down and knew the sons of man, or the daughters of men. And so that's where we like Goliath comes from in the Bible from what's called the Nephilim, which are angels and demons, or what some people call aliens. And so that's the first time I met her father, my girlfriend's father. We talked for literally 2 hours about like whether or not aliens were real or if they were just the Nephilim and whatnot. And I think my point of saying that is, he was we were both religious. We're kind of different denominations. But I think many of the like Orthodox religions, such as like Muslims, Christians, and Jews, or Israelites, whatever, I think they wouldn't have that big of a deal dealing with this because we all have some sort of framework for something that can be kind of considered aliens because that all three of those institutions share those kind of books. I don't know if Genesis is like in the Quran, but a lot of the Old Testament part of it kind of overlaps to some extent, but they definitely believe in Allah, they believe in God. It's the new agey religions that I think would kind of just dissipate because they'd have no breath or wherewithal to kind of adopt that reality into its religion.
yeah, and like I said, this is important because A lot of people's ideals and a lot of people's kind of understanding of the world is so concrete, and it's kind of a reality of people. Tribalism, kind of
Hmm.
kind of accepting a way of life and adopting that way of life and kind of sticking to it and casting other sides apart is just not natural for people generally, right? It's just not a natural
Yeah.
thing. That's why you have to have people constantly trying to open up their perspective, open up their point of view, and that's why conversation discussion is so important, so you can open up that
Yeah.
perspective. So with
You
that
know, I
said,
actually, oh, I actually kind of want to change or see what you think about this alternate version of what we just said about religions adopting the existence of aliens. I could see it going two ways. The way that I said, or I could see if aliens came down, supposing that they were real, came
I think I know
down,
what you're about
and
to say, but go ahead.
I think there could be another version of this playing out when it comes to religious front. The new agey people are in fact kind of spacey and ambiguous enough that they could possibly take into the fold, like, oh yeah, because they believe in the universe and the conscience of the universe, and they're just another extension of that. Like, Paul very aptly brought up Avatar, and their whole religion system there was, oh, the planet is alive, the planet, the universe, juice and spirits and stuff like that. I could see it playing out that aliens came down, and then a concerted effort was made to kind of make Christianity and those Orthodox religions even more old fashioned, ostracized, and oh, look at that. You have no right to explain this. They are part of the universe, and the universe brought us to. And they would make a concerted effort towards the new agey stuff and against these older, more Orthodox religions.
That's possible as well. I think what I thought you were gonna say is that they could use this as a message to even confirm their beliefs. So it's kind of in line with what you were saying. Um, because another thing that people do, as you were talking about, is people try to adapt the new knowledge to their frame of thinking, and that would be a perfect
Mhm.
example of that. That they adapt the new knowledge to their frame of thinking because they're too stubborn to kind of move from where they are. So that
But
definitely.
sometimes those things can be adapted. Sometimes there are explanations, but sometimes there's not.
Um, I agree that it really depends on how they frame it when it's once it's adapted. That's kind of like
Yeah.
the big thing for me regarding that. But overall, my point is that if the government as a whole, because I think some people need to realize this, because there are individuals out there, and for good reason, because I understand where you're coming from, but there are individuals out there that want the government to kind of tell them all the secrets. They want the government to tell them all the knowledge. They want to be the government to be honest with the people. But there needs to be some type of realization that this type of strategy is not a good idea. It's just not a good idea to be completely honest with the people because the people wouldn't be able to handle it. Even if something that's even much more minor, right? Where there's a police investigation. And matter of fact, Jonathan and Paul were talking a little bit about it beforehand. And let's say there's an example of a potential, rape situation where there's a rapist and all the gruesome things they did. Maybe even go far because there are people out there that keep them like locked up in their house for X, Y, and Z, and then there's a bunch of information on what they did. As a police department, even as the media, you would not give out all those graphic details because people couldn't handle it.
Yeah. I have a perfect example
Go ahead.
when you're done. So for about a year and a half, 2 years, I worked at a research facility, a research lab on my campus, where we studied police officers that committed crimes, and um, and sometimes it was like DUIs, or OVIs, whatever you might call them. Other times it was situations similar to what Paul just described, literally. And so I would come home every day, and my mom would ask me, "How was my day? What happened at the lab?" And I would not then go on a rant describing the very graphic details of what I read on a daily basis. We had to have many meetings at this lab. Like, if you need a day off, you need a day off because we had to read court records, court files, journal magazines about what these police officers did to code the kind of crimes they committed, all that sort of thing. And so I read some very disturbing things. And my mom is an amazing woman, and she does not like those kind of details. So when my mom asks me how my day was, I'm not going to describe in graphic detail all of the things because that will just perturb her. She'll get upset. She'll get, very emotional. So she won't be happy with that. So I just tell her, "Oh, my day was good. Read a lot of cases today. Blah 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 blah." If somebody else asked, I might tell them, but it's also not like information that everybody needs to know about all the time. So there's a prudential level here when it comes to this kind of very important things. I think there's certain people that should know about it, right? Like redundancies that need to be done to ensure the system is safe. But by and large, some information that I'm sure the government knows is not like it's not prudent to just tell about it. I think there's a second level of prudence that comes involved. There's that first one, which is like keeping people from being, emotionally scarred or whatever it might be. But there's also, Riddell brought up the great point of like a police investigation. There's two reasons why you don't bring up a police investigation when it's active. One of them is that former category that he mentioned. Sometimes those details are just gory and they don't need to be given out to the media. The other time is because sometimes it can make it harder for the police to conduct the investigation. So there are plenty of times when the government is keeping information away because they're currently doing something very important. And if everybody knew about it, then that's going to violate and make it impossible to accomplish that task.
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with the government, right? So logistically, think about it if we're going to use the example of advanced military technology. Because more than likely, in my personal opinion, and I think similarly to John and probably Paul as well, is that we are not necessarily in believance of the fact that there's aliens. We think that these are situations where it's probably advanced weapon military technology. I would go a step further and say I would say I potentially think that that whistleblower is someone that the military or the government wanted to do this meeting and this hearing to provide this information to make it much more skeptical in terms of aliens, or much more skeptical in terms of the military being involved, but it is in fact aliens. Because a sentence like, "Oh, these bodies that we found were not human," that's so easy to grasp the attention of ignorant individuals.
Well,
So,
is that verbatim what he said? Like, what
um,
did he? Do you know what he actually said?
So I know for a fact he said that the bodies that there were, I don't remember if the bodies were from a crash or the bodies were being examined, but he did say that they were not human. He 100% said that. Um, so he was referring to some bodies, the circumstance of the bodies, I don't know, but the bodies that he was referring to were not human. So this is a powerful statement. It's a powerful statement because it's like the perfect, "Oh, it's aliens." It's a perfect way to kind of conclude that it's aliens. So with that said, I that's why I think it's military technology, advanced military technology. Are people going to see it no matter how secretive you are? Oh, of course people are going to see it. You only have so much sky. You can't hide everything. So the reason why I'm saying this is because the next conversation is here on how people, or should people know. Well, like John just said, there's two prongs to think about. One, in terms of the most peaceful society you can create, the most peaceful society you can create is a society where everybody's ignorant of the realities of the world. Let's be honest. As the most, there's no way can make them honest on how much people are actually dying, because people are really ignorant in America. People don't really understand how much people are actually suffering in other countries. People don't really understand how much people are actually going and child trafficking and prostitution, dealing with some of the most horrible things that is happening every single day. They're ignorant. And that's how you create a peaceful society. Make them ignorant because they don't need to know. If they can't change it, then it's best for them to be ignorant.
Well, there's a
If I'm the
great quote.
leader, go ahead.
I don't know where it's from. All I know is I saw it on Instagram. But there's like, oh, a democratic system is a government by the people for the people, but the people are stupid. So it's like it's it's so true what you said. And I have had the overwhelming privilege of being able to go overseas and see some of it. And it's sad that we laugh, but in Rwanda, in the capital city Kigali, which is like the only place in Rwanda where you can get any semblance of like first world city, because you can get hotspots and you can go to nominally fast food restaurants and stuff like that. But there's a section of it that it's a slum, and literally the name of it is "Where do they poop?" Because there's nowhere for them to go to the bathroom. And so I don't know if that's more of a I was young when I was there, but I was old enough to grasp, and I don't know like if that was like a slang term for it. I believe that's literally what the name of it was called, because they literally have no place to use the restroom. So they just go right outside their door, and you can walk, and when you walk past it, you can see some of the periphery of that slum coming out to a big river that just flew through the middle of the city, and they would just bathe in the river. They just strip their clothes off and jump in. No soap, no conditioner, no shampoo, no hair lighten fluffer, like none of that. Like they just jump in and that's their bath for like the week. So people have just no concept of what happens outside of America.
And that's very true, and I don't blame them, right? I would that's why I wouldn't have these like I am completely aware of how the world really works. But I feel like I'm capable of like conceptualizing, how it is at the end of the day. We're privileged to be Americans. We're privileged to live in America. And there's two aspects of the ignorance as well. There's obviously being, protecting them from the horrors of the reality of the world, and then protecting them from themselves as well. And I think that's where the ignorance of potential advanced military technology would come in. Right. In this situation, if we had advanced military technology that can do X, Y, and Z, and people, and it's important to note that if we don't have technology that can be commercial use, why does the people need to know about it to an extent? I think that could definitely be brought out when it comes to a very very advanced technology, like you said, Oppenheimer come out, and let's say back in the day, um the people who found out about a nuclear bomb that can kill millions of people. Like, why do the people need to know about something like that if that exists? Right. So ignorance of themselves would come in when them potentially finding out that we have advanced technology that could maybe, travel at speeds beyond a rocket ship on Earth. Potentially, I'm just making stuff up. I don't know if that's actually true. So, or maybe the Iron Man suit, maybe we have something like that, right? And we have this technology. People, what are they going to want? They're going to want to know more. They're going to want to have access. They're going to want to see what it can do. And another aspect that he brought up, that Jonathan brought up in terms of the second part of the investigation, is the other countries. We need to realize that even though we're the most powerful country in the world, we have the number one military. One important part of staying powerful is keeping secrets, making sure that the other countries can't even guess what we have or what we're about to do. That's a very important strategy, and when handling and kind of showing your power, right? So of course this is not something we want other countries to know, and I'm sure they have technology they don't want us to know, right? So having people know about this, wanting to know more, potentially even writing to know more, and making it a problem, because once you figure out, we said I forget if we talked about it in this episode, we said one of the most dangerous type of person is like a normal person that has like amazing ambition, right? I think that was something like that in terms of the quote. But the reason why that quote exists is like an average man who has like all the time in the world and has like a straightforward goal, and he will do anything to accomplish that goal. That could be a very dangerous individual. And if he finds out that, hey, we have very very dangerous technology, and that's, I'm just saying, I'm not saying it won't happen, but this is the potential worries of letting the people know about this very very advanced technology. It's protecting them from themselves and protecting us as a country from other countries learning about the secret that we have. So
Yeah, well, I
that's where I
look
come
back
from.
at history and like the measures and lengths with which the U-2 spy planes were trying to be prevented from Russia finding out about them. Like the whole thing was rigged with explosives, or especially like the fuel capsule and the front part with the camera technology that was state of the art that we were flying over Russia and we didn't want them to know about it. Same thing with, Oppenheimer and the bomb, all of this very secret, like there's just history and history of the government preventing because what happens if so like what happens if our enemies get it? Because inherently America is still the best country, both morally and just economically and militarily and freedom of opportunities. It's just simply the best. And there's other nations that are threatening us on all of those levels, both morally, economically, powerfully at all times. And if they got technology that was state of the art, that was insanely powerful, then of course we don't want people to know about them. It just makes sense if we're trying to prevent them from another person. Like
It,
I just think, like, just imagine, like, I mean, we can look at this historically as well. Look at the powerhouse that China was and Eastern Asia when they first developed guns. And like look when Europe and Britain and Spain brought guns over to the Americas, how easily they just decimated everybody. Now imagine if you dropped like an 1800s era cannon or rifle back into the time of like the Romans. Like how insane that would be. But for instance, like the difference in gunpowder and power of firearms from the Revolutionary War to the Civil War is almost incomprehensible. People don't realize how much technology, but the powder was so much more powerful back then. The accuracy of the bullets so much better. And imagine if other countries got a hold of that at the same time that America did, how big of a difference that would make, let alone if you have this incredibly state of the art technology, like say just an 1800s gun, you took that back to the War of the Roses times. Like that would have been an incomprehensible tool to eradicate any country easily. And if America has this kind of technology that's that state of the art that can get to the speed of sound in literally seconds, that can stand perfectly still in the sky, if any of that is actually true, which I still doubt, but if it is true, imagine if our enemies had the capability of that technology. It's just incomprehensible.
exactly. So it just makes sense that we want to keep this information kind of closed doors at the end of the day, especially with the introduction of everybody having a smartphone technology, right? Everybody having a camera, right? It's even harder to keep information at bay because, people complain about all the Russian hackers, but they are out there. So once the information is public, any country will find out about it. So it's even
Well, that's
more
another thing
important.
that I question. Sorry.
What? What part?
It's like everybody has like my phone camera is amazing. Like right now I'm recording this on my phone camera. It's pretty good quality. Everybody has access to these amazing cameras. The government has state of the art cameras, but yet every single video of the alleged aliens is like some super grainy 8 megapixel camera from like 1980s. It's like, what? Come on now. I doubt that.
Same thing with every capture of
Bigfoot.
ghosts. Like anytime somebody
Yeah.
captures a picture of a ghost, it's super green. You can barely tell what's going on. So yeah, I understand people want aliens to exist because I mean I personally think aliens exist to an extent. Like I think there's other life. I don't know if there's other like sentient intelligent life. I can't really say that for sure. But 100% there's definitely like organisms out there that are living, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're living in conditions that are different from humans, like a organism that can breathe on hydrogen instead of oxygen. I mean, it's possible, it's not impossible technically, with other planets and with how their kind of way of lives are compared to Earth, of course. So I don't mind about the you believing in aliens or anything. The practicality of them coming to Earth and then losing to human missiles doesn't make sense to me. You guys really have to understand how, if they are advanced enough to travel at speeds beyond light, there's no way Earth can touch them. There's none, not no way we can touch them. So we will lose every single time. But with that said, the government conversation should be understood. And if you were in power, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, if you were in power, you would do the same thing. If you have kids, you don't even tell your kids everything. Let's make it very simple for people. If you had a 6-year-old daughter, you're not telling them everything you're doing in the house. You're not telling them about the taxes, the chores, the bills, the harassment I might have had at work. You're just not telling them. And I'm sorry to
Yeah.
equate the U.S. people, the U.S. citizens, to kids, but like, just think about it a little bit.
Yeah, there's a really funny comedy bit that I saw that this guy's like, I can't stand people that are this and that, and if they don't believe in conspiracy theories, it's like, I'm sorry, but the government is in charge of all of its people. I'm a father who's got just one son, and I lie to that kid all the time. It's like exactly right. Like I would like if I was like a 6-year old or like even now, like as a grown person, if my dad came up to me one day and was like, dude, you know, we're just really struggling financially right now. We're having all the issues. I think the bank might take the house back. This has been happening. That I'd be like, why are you telling me this? I don't want to know that. Like that would freak me out as an adult. Imagine if I was like a 10-year-old, like I wouldn't even know what to do. And I look at it the same way. There's some things that need to be told. Like, my dad would come to me like, if we're moving, like, hey son, I just want you to know we're moving, and so get your stuff ready, say bye to your friends. Like there's some things that you do tell. There's other things that you don't tell, and there's a very fine prudential line between them.
So, speaking of conspiracy theories, let's just dive into it. Let's have fun today. Well, first, let's talk about some technology that people say that we have, right? So, one thing that I heard that the government is hiding is I'm sure you've heard of like the conspiracy theory that we have technology in Antarctica that can cause
Yeah.
earthquakes, right?
Yes.
So, what do you think about that? What do you think about? Let's bring out another piece of technology so we can have a more broader conversation. There's also kind of theories about having technology that can manipulate the weather. So that's another theory that we have technology that can manipulate the weather. And is there any like other big ones that you think that we're hiding from the people that there's been theories about?
Death laser rays from above.
Laser. I mean, we know we have lasers. I think it's not hard to imagine us to have like deadly
No,
lasers.
I those are the two that I know, like being able to control the weather and being able to cause earthquakes. Maybe like some broader people always speculate, like especially over COVID, like the mass formation psychosis, those sorts of like telepathic waves. People always, like to talk about those
That
sorts of
would
things.
be tough to really
I
know.
don't I
I
think that's easier to do just through the media, exactly how they did it over 2020. Like I think that's how they would do that. It wouldn't be some piece of technology.
Okay. So okay, this is what we're gonna do, right? We're gonna go through a bunch of different things that people are saying. The people are saying that the government is keeping secret. We'll say if it makes sense or not. Like if it was a secret, we'll say yes, I would keep it secret versus no, I would keep it secret, and then we'll talk about whether or not we even think this is a real thing. So first thing, technology at Antarctica that can create earthquakes. What do we think? If we did have a technology, would you tell people?
If we had that, no, probably not, because that's something that would be very dangerous if our enemies got.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell people either. The practicality of this technology to create earthquakes, I would say, obviously, in terms of like it screwing up our enemies, of course it will screw up our enemies. That'll be very deadly technology. But there might be some like practical uses in terms of like with our tectonic plates and potentially moving it around. Obviously, anytime they move around in certain direction, they can cause earthquakes. But there might be a situation, I
So,
can't think of a specific one, where an earthquake could stabilize the grounds versus make it worse. There might be an example out there.
so there's a couple things. Obviously, weaponized use is very good. The only beneficial way that I could possibly see it would be, a very effective way to like level decommissioned buildings, old towns that need to be removed. If that was widely available technology, there could be some ergonomic uses of it, like, old cities that are like deemed hazardous and we need to level those buildings very easily and effectively possible. The level of earthquake would be so beyond our capabilities, like, because the way that earthquakes work is two tectonic plates moving together, and it's not the sliding that causes the earthquake. It's when something gets stuck and then there's a friction that causes, and then it's the slip that causes the earthquake. It's the snap reverberating effect, similar to the snapping of the finger. It's actually once the finger hits the palm that causes the sound. It's not the rotating of the finger. It's the sudden stop after like a very powerful spring that causes these earthquakes. And we have no I would be beyond astounded if there was any level of technology that could force tectonic plates to move to cause an earthquake powerful enough to do any kind of damage. We can cause like minimal earthquakes just through big explosions, explosives. Obviously, those causes the earth to tremble, but I don't. That's nowhere near enough technology. Like, I mean, the close thing is like an atomic bomb, but like the atomic bomb is destroying the city with explosives from above the ground. It's not causing an earthquake.
It really depends on. I can't see the plausibility either, but to be fair, like if they're doing a secret, they would have to have been able to create an energy source that is that powerful. And I don't
Yes.
know the how like potent and how much nuclear energy you would need to create something that is like that powerful necessarily.
Yeah. The
Um,
closest.
but if they're in
Go ahead.
Antarctica, I can see them heavily using nuclear energy, or I can see them heavily using something a lot more volatile. But since you're in the middle of Antarctica where there's no life, miles and miles and miles away, I mean, you can kind of just go crazy to an extent. So I don't know.
The other way that I could foresee something like that happening is like, when you get the right frequency on something and it causes it to shake and tremor, and or there's such things like these, I forget, like essentially pneumatic pistons that are really powerful, but they cause like a small vibration on a bridge. And if you time it right, then you could just get the frequency and the rotation to just cause the thing to collapse. Like we've seen things like that. I could potentially see something like that working, but the scale at which it would need to be. And the problem is, if it was at the right scale, they really wouldn't have much control over where it went because you'd have to go to that area, drop the device off, and do something like that. And I don't think that kind of technology exists at this point either.
Yeah, overall, I don't think that type of technology existed either. But practically in terms of destroying your enemies, right? This technology would be obviously extremely efficient of destroying their society, potentially taking out people. So, you wouldn't need people for that. You just need an earthquake. So that's a
Yeah.
dangerous weapon, dangerous weapon. All right, next is a weather technology. So one that controls the weather. And if we had technology to control the weather, would I tell the people? Honestly, I would have to kind of determine a lot because, like, in a situation where you control the weather, you could look at it like, okay, I could control how much like water or rain a farmland would get. And obviously there's so many problems with that ethically. But in terms of just natural, like a city, whether they get rain or wind or anything, like who cares about that? So it's definitely circumstantial based. But overall, that's also kind of playing God. So most likely I wouldn't tell the people. That's kind of too much control over the environment, and I would probably wouldn't tell people if I had that. And there definitely would be requests. Hey, a farmer would go like, "Bro, I need some rain. Can you kind of fix this?" Definitely stuff like that could happen.
I think it would widely depend on the extent to which I could control the weather. Like if I could be causing tsunamis and hurricanes, then that might be the best not to tell them. But there's already the ability to, like, for lack of a better term, control the weather, like inseminating a cloud with water, that sort of thing. And they do those in African countries where there are massive droughts and stuff. Only problem is you have to have already like got your you have to already have clouds in the sky. We can't create clouds like at the scale enough to do that, but we can control the weather to certain circumstances and to certain extents. So I would, if it was just one of those things, I would probably tell him. But if it was like the capabilities to create tornadoes at large enough scales to level cities, to create hurricane tsunamis, once again, then it becomes the national interest to make sure our enemies don't get that technology. So I wouldn't tell them.
I definitely see what you're saying. I would say that my only issue is one, the kind of economic benefit, and obviously, anytime something would go wrong or some disdain would happen in terms of the weather, they wouldn't know if it was the government or the people or the natural causes causing it. So there would always be kind of some unwariness in terms of the government and their act on the people. They would
Yeah,
have to make it very apparent when the technology is being used every single time they use it.
yeah, that is true to some extent, but at the same time, I think it would definitely be in the economic interest of that kind of technology becoming public access. Because obviously, with that, it's going to take a lot of money to operate that. That would certainly get into the hands of very large business corporations that would control it, and then they could contract uses of it out. But I mean, we all know intuitively that big businesses in America, a lot of their money ends up going into the government some way or another. And so it would certainly be in the financial interest if it was that more nominal control of the weather for that kind of technology to get out into the public market. Because then, farmers in Idaho during droughts, people just anywhere in America that needed rain or lack of rain could contract that device, could pay the company, and then that would be implemented. And then, donors give that back to the US government or paying for campaigns, all that sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it would definitely be it would bring in some type of ethical questions at the very least in terms of
Oh,
how
sure.
they're using the machine. And I could definitely see the benefit. Like I said earlier, I could say the benefit for like a farmland, of course. um the question is, how do you make, for one, making sure it's limited to the point where it's not overutilized, because
Yes.
once
We have
what are you
Yeah,
about
go
to say?
ahead. Actually, we have no idea what kind of effect that would have on the climate.
And that's another part where it's like, could we potentially permanently damage the weather depending on how it's used, the climate more so. And that's another important kind of distinguish. We're about to turn California into Ohio. Do we want to do that? It's very possible if we have a weather machine. So I don't know, it's a interesting question, but we overall, I don't think we either of us believe in like a weather machine. So with that said, next kind of a conspiracy would be, do you think we landed on the moon? And the question for you, if we didn't land on the moon, would you tell the people we did land on the moon just to be first?
Um, I do believe we landed on the moon. Um, I think, yeah, I think we landed on the moon. I do. If we didn't land on the moon, would I tell the people?
Because
I
what matters is being first. That's what matters here.
Yeah. Hmm. There was, as I understand, very little indications that the government had that the Russians were going to beat them. I mean, there was the space race, but I don't know that there was any like serious concern that the Russians were going to get to the moon first because we were kind of neck and neck with them right behind them. Um, I could be totally wrong about that, but I don't think there would have been a need to tell them expressly that we did it. We could have continued in that space race for a little bit longer until we realized that the Russians were exhausting their technological output. Um, so I don't see the necessity to have done that when they did it, because it was looking as if we were going to beat them on the technological front.
Yeah, for me, thinking about it, because there's a certain pride that you gain from having this astronomical achievement, and that pride
Yeah,
carries over. Obviously, it kind of unifies the countries to an extent, right? We as a
yeah,
country landed on the moon first, so there's certain power to kind of rally behind such an achievement, kind of similar to like us winning the Olympics or us winning the World Cup. Well, us our football team will never win, but we have Messi now, so maybe he'll join the American team and we'll win.
wait, what?
So we have Messi now, and he's playing for an
Who's
American
we?
team.
He
America.
is?
Yeah, he's playing for the
Really?
Miami team right now. Yeah.
What?
Yep. So if he plays
That's
for the American,
insane.
if he plays for the American World Cup team, and we might win one for the first time. For the first time, I don't know if we've won one in the past, but it could happen. It could
I don't know
happen.
why we would want to win in soccer. That
Just to
I
win,
suppose we
just to be
are.
the
I
best.
suppose we are a nation of pride. I guess a nation of gay people. So, I guess if we want to win at soccer, we can really dive
Hey,
into that.
we want to win at everything. We school everybody at basketball. Obviously, nobody else plays football. The other
Well,
countries that
nobody
do, like
else has like 7 foot tall giants like we do. So,
China, tried it with Yao Ming. That's another conspiracy that they artificially created him. Um, but
I believe
America
that.
America's a powerful country, and we wanted that that new one. So I could definitely see the mindset of the leader at the time who had to make a decision if we didn't land on the moon. A, I want the
Do you
people to
believe we
believe in
landed on the
this.
moon?
Yeah, I believe in the land on the moon. I'm not with. I don't believe in most conspiracy theories, but in the case if we didn't, I probably, and I think it's important to note if we didn't and Russia did first, or to prevent Russia from doing it first, I think there's something to say of lying, but personally, I'm against lying, so I wouldn't do it. But I can
Right.
understand why another leader would do it, to kind of
Yeah.
establish that sense of pride. But I'm not one to kind of lie when it's not necessary. I think there's obviously necessary lies and not necessary ones. I don't think this one would be a necessary lie.
All right. I got a conspiracy theory for you.
Go for
Okay. All right. Did Hitler commit suicide or did he go to Argentina?
it.
Did he actually commit suicide or was he still alive?
I mean, I think he committed suicide. I've heard
You
so many.
do?
Yeah, I think he committed suicide. To be fair, I haven't really. This is not something I overly research, but at the same time, like, I feel like there's so many
They
theories out there of like big criminals escaping death and going somewhere else.
No, I don't believe all of them, but I do believe that Hitler is alive because they did a DNA test of the bones which the Russians claimed were Hitler, that like they got the bones, and it was a 20-year-old girl whom they said was the charred bone structure and skeletons of Hitler. Not his, because obviously the rumors he committed suicide with his wife, who still would have been a 40-year-old woman at the time, or 30, late 30s, but the bones that they said were Hitler's was like a 20-year-old girl's.
So I would have to look up the context of one, where did they find the bones, and two, um, what I guess that would be the most thing. Like, where did they find the bones? Did they find it in the room? Did they find it maybe I wouldn't.
And at
I
the
would have to
bunker.
figure out the context of the location, and then second, the context of the declaration of Hitler's suicide. So I would have to look into
Yeah.
that. But
I'm not saying I've done a whole bunch of research, but I have seen some things and watched some. I can neither confirm or deny if this was on the Joe Rogan podcast, but it might have been. It might have been. But no. I mean, you can say that, but obviously the Nazis escaped and got to Argentina. Whether or not Hitler did is another story. But obviously, many of the top Nazi scientists escaped and just continued on the same experiments in Argentina with the local Argentinians. I mean, because there's people like you go into a house there and you just find boxes of Nazi memorabilia of high lieutenants and corporals and from the military, from the Nazi military. So the Nazis definitely got away and are in Argentina for sure.
So I guess the question is, if you found out that Hitler didn't kill himself, would you tell the people?
Oh yeah.
You would tell the people that he survived and lived the rest of his life?
Oh yeah. That's something that the public would need to know. That would be a bonding thing for the American people, I think. I think that would there would be some initial outrage, but I think um people would probably rally together again at at the realization of well, let me think about that for a second. Because I
Yeah,
could see it going either ways. I could see it going either ways. But,
I
initially
don't
the
agree, to be
terror
honest.
initially the terror and the realization after World War II and World War One really brought people together after they realized that the level of destruction and death that happened. Um, but I think so. I certainly think you could spin it. Right? You could spin it when right now we're very against the Russians and we need to attack the Russians or whatever. Certainly, it could be spun to say, look how the Russians lied to us. We need to bind together as Americans to get the Russians or whatever it might be. Or you could even compare it for like Russia of the day was deep in the thralls of communism under Stalin. Um, and this is what China is like now. This is the level of corruption. They couldn't even tell us that Hitler died. You could do that sort of thing, and I think you could definitely spin the fact to make it a positive or to make like get some actionable response. But I think possibly if it came out that Hitler survived, people would be outraged, people would be pissed, and it could definitely cause some problems. So I can kind of see it if they did it right, they could turn it into a unifying something. But if they didn't do it right, I could see how it would cause a lot of anger and outrage.
Yeah, if I guess it depends. Like, if I found
We
out
just
at
can't
the
let Kanye talk during if that happens. We
true,
just need to muzzle Kanye.
if I found out at the time, it was like, oh yeah, it's possible Hitler didn't kill himself. I would honestly, I wouldn't tell the people. I'll tell the people Hitler died. I think it's more negative if they know he's alive, because for me, the big thing is like you can frame it, but I think that's just manipulating the people with the facts that you know, and
Sure,
a lot of people don't like that, of course. And if for me, who has like the conceptual understanding of what you're doing, I would understand that you're just trying to turn us against a different enemy, which smart military
sure.
tactics, but I wouldn't appreciate it as an individual. That and then the second thing is like there's a there's a certain kind of like moral thing about it too,
Oh
because like
yeah,
at the end of the day, the ultimate evil is gone on the world versus the ultimate evil got to do the worst thing in all of humanity and got to live a normal life for the rest of his life. So
yeah.
people just wouldn't be able to kind of like cope with that type of
I
understanding.
would say the moral responsibility that you have is to tell the truth and to tell that Hitler survived. But there's a couple things with that. Um, the absolute evil is still
Well,
around,
the
right?
moral
Because
understanding, I definitely agree that the moral understanding would be the moral thing for the person would be the truth. But I think in leadership, morality is not the first thing you should care about, personally. But the people need to be moral. The leadership, arguable.
yeah, there's something to be said for what you were indicating, but I mean, so when you have the framework that I have, um, you realize that Hitler was not the epitome of evil. There was a spirit inside of him that still exists, and it's a spirit of anonymity. It's something that can happen to nearly anyone. Not necessarily just like boom, one day you wake up evil, but the thing that makes Hitler evil was a spirit behind him. And we saw the same spirit in Joseph Stalin. who killed more people than Hitler did of his own race. The people that died under the USSR was just unimaginable. I mean, the Cambodian killing fields that happened in Asia, like these people, Hitler, I think obviously, obviously Hitler was a despicable person. There's something twisted in his brain and in his spirit. But people don't realize at the same time how many other people were doing horrendous evils on a very similar scale. I mean, the people that, Mao Zedong killed, the people that happened in the Cambodian killing fields, the people that died in the USSR, the Ukrainians that were slaughtered back then. You want to talk about like slaughter today? Oh my gosh, the Ukrainians that were slaughtered back in 1930s and the 40s, unimaginable. Unimaginable death and tragedy. There is a spirit that animates, and it still can come around today. That evil, because Hitler is dead, doesn't mean that that will never happen again, because it already has. And we see this. This is one of the things that we see that is problematic that people identify on the far right, people like Nick Fuentes, who use the same sort of rhetoric. And that's why it's a dangerous thing, because it's not a singular person that was the epitome of evil. It's a spirit that pervades the human heart. Alexander Solzhenitsyn has one of the best quotes um, I've ever heard, and it's one of his most famous lines. And it's talking about the sort of things that the captains in the Russian military would do. They would just do these senseless acts of violence to people. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Um, but it's essentially the line that divides between the good and evil cuts through every human heart. Um, and the point of that is, um, I'm not going to be able to find it. But the line, every it goes through every human heart. Anybody at any time can have a really bad day and start a catalyst of events that lead you to do something horrendous. And that's what he's saying there. And I think we try to pass off like, oh, all evil is embodied in this one person over there, but that's not how it actually is in reality. It can It's not going to strike you one day and all of a sudden you're just the epitome of evil. But the line that divides between good and evil cuts through every human heart, and it starts with one small thing. It starts with one small thing and it leads to another, it leads to another, and it leads to another.
Yeah, so I definitely agree to that, and I know that's how most kind of evils start, with exceptions of psychopaths and sociopaths that are innately just don't feel emotion. And I think there are also another kind of point to bring up is that certain people are more prone to evil than others. So one person can go through the same events as the other person and end up a totally different way. So it really at the end, very end, depends on the person. But that stuff in terms of events leading up to, it's kind of a similar thing to like, a pedophile who was abused as a child, which tends to be most pedophiles, and then do very despicable things as they're older. I can't, despite what you've gone through. Obviously, it's terrible, but I still can't forgive what you're doing now. So, the actions of the society and the government is to obviously notate the events as they're happening, document the events as they're happening, find out those individuals. And I think this is the conversation we had with like mass shooters, right? We can kind of notate when they're kind of reaching a path of being very, very dangerous individuals. We should intervene in those circumstances more often than not, at the end of the day. But overall, in regards to the point that was being made, Hitler, whether or not you want to say he's the epitome of evil or the spirit that he encompasses, very similar to other individuals that you mentioned are evil, regardless of what point you want to make right there, I think it's still to the people that are listening or the people that are
Yeah.
like part of the country. Those people just see evil and they want justice for evil. So in
Yeah.
in it telling an individual that the person didn't get justice can break some people in terms of their moral system. They might start thinking legitimately that there's no good in the world if this pure evil individual was able to do what he did, do what she did, and live a normal life, right? So I guess that's where I'm coming from, and that's probably why I would individually,
Yeah,
if
and I
there's
could
some,
certainly see. Oh, sorry. No,
if there's
finish.
some sentiment that, if there was no sentiment that he committed suicide, like if the Russians didn't mention it initially, then it would be harder to sell. But if they initiated it, then I think as long as there's no way to prove or deny it, I probably would go more often than not to say he's dead. Give people the ease of mind of not worrying about this individual. That's probably where I would go.
Yeah, I can certainly see that tracked as well. And to some extent, what I was saying is in some ways semantic because obviously Hitler still did those things, but I do think it is important to note because we have this concept of that and because we can actually make a more solid even than we already had, which was already pretty solid, case against that sort of thing when we say it actually happens in other people as well. Because I think when we see something like that, when we see something like Hitler, and we just say, "Oh, this is only something that is relegated only to Adolf Hitler," then we have, in some ways, this kind of cognitive dissonance about it. Like, "Oh, that can't happen again because he was such an extraordinarily evil person." But when we
Right.
realize that it actually can happen over, we can make it even more realization that we all need to be very careful. But I do totally understand what you're saying, where like people, like you hate the movie when the villain wins, when the villain does all these things, or doesn't get quite the amount of justice that he deserves. Like he gets this and he gets that, but it's always more satisfying when the really really evil guy is running and then falls off a cliff to a horrendous death. Like, it's more satisfying when that kinda happens because the justice is served. So I do understand that as well, but we also know, I suppose we don't technically know, but
Stop right there. Yes, this is a little mini ad. Don't skip. Don't skip. All I want to tell you right now is that at the end of the day, when it comes down to all the discussions I want to have, I want to be able to communicate with you, the audience. I want to be able to relay a message and receive a message from everyone and try to come up with these great solutions that I keep on talking about. So if you want to be part of the community, make sure you go to the website and sign up for not only the email list so you can get weekly emails from me for the podcast episode, informational sessions, all that great stuff, but also sign up to go on my Discord so you can be part of the discussions, debates on my live streams. So be sure to go to the website www.purplepoliticalbreakdown.com and go to the email list, sign up, and go to the Discord and join the server. Now back to the episode.
I would hedge my bets to say that even if Hitler lived out the rest of his days here, justice did happen to him, because we're eternal beings, and so we go either to a good place or a very, very bad place.
And that's a fair way to think as well, which I'm not mad at it. What kind of aligning with that, there's another theory that Jeffrey Epstein didn't commit suicide.
Oh,
And that,
please don't even. That's not a conspiracy theory. He didn't commit suicide. Not a chance. Even the
well,
FBI admits it now.
well, it goes farther the fact that he's not dead at all and that people think that
Oh.
he's still alive but
Oh
hidden.
no, he's dead. He dead.
So, okay, let's say he is alive. And as a government he's alive. And the reason why he's alive is because he has all those dirty secrets about all those very, 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 very important people. Would you
Well,
tell the
that's all the more
people?
reason to kill him. You wouldn't keep somebody alive that has all the secrets.
My conceptualization of this is the information is held hostage, and the
And if he
people,
dies, then it
if
gets
he
released.
dies, it gets released. Yes.
Okay. Okay. No, that's obviously something you don't tell the people. You don't let the government like the no, if you're the government, obviously you don't tell the people because they has the secrets on you. And so if they know that he's alive, and they know that all the secrets that they people already kind of know is true, but don't really know is true. As soon as you find out that Epstein is alive, then that morally, obviously, yeah, you have an obligation to tell the truth. They should change their ways. They should all probably relinquish their posts and let better people take over. But the government's not going to do that. So of course you don't let the people know.
Yeah, I mean, I unfortunately, okay, let me think. So, okay, I'm in a situation because, like, me and you, let's say we're in a situation of power. Me and you would never do it. We would never be some weird pedophiles on Epstein Island. But we know he's alive, and we know he has secrets about people we know, like powerful people in our government, and it doesn't stop there.
Oh,
He knows powerful people in other countries because he apparently there was princes on there, government officials from other countries, government officials from our allies. So
yeah, yeah. Talking
we're
about
not personally,
whistleblower stuff. Yeah.
well, yeah, we're not personally involved, but we can put everybody to shame real quick. We could put everybody away,
Oh yeah. I blow that whistle all day.
even if it threatens, you know, our power, our governmental power.
Oh sure. There's certain things that's like this is what the Bible talks about. Um, what gain is it to gain the whole world but lose your soul? Like there is no gain in that. There's no point. It's something. It's also something that.
Well, you're not
Never mind. I'm not going to get into the big
you're not
philosophical.
exactly telling the people who were the pedophiles. You're just telling them Jeffrey Epstein's still alive. That's all you're telling them.
Yeah, sure. Still,
Okay.
there's ways they could probably do that in such a way that I could maintain my anonymity and still do it. But if I was coming out and do like if I knew that Epstein was still alive, if I knew all the people on the list, then yeah, I will risk at least I would hope that I would, right? I hope that I would. Um, I suppose I wouldn't know until I was in that sort of circumstance. But yeah, I would tell people.
All right. Yeah, I think I would tell people as well if Epstein. Let me think, because different from Hitler in the sense that Epstein's obviously pure evil to the eyes of people, but his impact of being alive and being not alive is a little bit different in the sense that he can affect like some of the most powerful people and their image and all that stuff. So it would be hard to kind of figure out, like, morally, obviously you would want to tell the people, but like I guess more, I guess politically, it would be hard to kind of figure out, okay, what will happen to the country and
Well,
our
do you know who
relationships.
Madison Cawthorn is?
I think I've heard the name.
So he's one of the he was a representative from I believe one of the Carolinas, I think North Carolina. He's in the wheelchair. Um, and he was talking about um he did one interview in which he admitted he was up for re-election. There was no evidence that he was going to lose. He was a very beloved candidate. Everybody from his district loved him. He was very popular. I liked him. He was a great guy. Um, and then he did one interview in which he talked about eyes wide shut kind of parties, where massive orgies with all the people of the power
Oh, is
going
it
to
that
the
really
special
young guy?
clubs. Yeah, very young, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden all of his donors pull out, and then completely blacklisted.
Yeah, that's another, because you lose all your connect, because unfortunate politics is a connection game. It's a networking game where you know the right
Oh
people.
yeah.
That's the only way you're getting voted in. Unless you really popular with the people, you can get elected as a representative, but you're not going anywhere beyond that. So yeah, that's another potential risk when it comes down to these games, unfortunately. But I think overall, I think I would out Jeffrey Epstein and say, hey man, this guy's still alive. You better go find him. Better get him out of here. Get this out of here. So is there any other, like, government secrets or conspiracy theories that we should bring up, that whether or not the people should know?
Um, I can't really think of Any particular ones?
Yeah, the flat Earth one is too ridiculous to even bring up. Um, the lizard people is too ridiculous to bring up. Uh oh,
There's always like the
last
crazy
one.
sex cult things that
Yeah, I mean we all know
we
those are
all know
true.
that. Yeah.
The big one, the big one, 9/11.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, the big one. Where so the question for you: if you found out when you become a representative that the government did cause 9/11, what'd you tell the people? This one is very. It's kind of like the Epstein, but on a bigger level in terms of how
Well, it's kind
much
of
this could
it's more
change.
similar to the Hitler, if Hitler survived or if he didn't, because this was something that really brought America together. It's like, oh,
I would
enemies
say
abroad.
the only reason why I brought the Epstein one is because like if you kind of admitted to the people that the government was involved, it would destroy the trust. It would absolutely
Oh
demolish the
yeah,
trust of the
yeah.
government.
It'd be 1776 all over again, probably.
And is that worth telling the people if it'll completely destroy the trust of the government? I don't. That's a tough one. It's a really tough one.
I could see it being a net positive if it was handled correctly. Because, like, especially, like, think of it this way. Think about if you could prove that you were a good candidate, if you were a good person, think about the level of house cleaning that you could do, because every act that was based off of 9/11, every department that was created because of 9/11 that's causing issues, the bureaucracy at large could just be totally eradicated if you came up with like, listen, I found this out, we need to do this, we need to get rid of these people because the fraud is so deep that 9/11 was instigated by the government. Like the level of cleaning house that you could accomplish with something like that is ridiculous, and you would be totally justified to do it, right? It's not like what you said before when I said, oh, you could spin it in such a way as Hitler being alive is a positive because you could gain this kind of benefit and point out this. Like, this would be a totally justified, like, quasi jihad inside of the American government. That, like, listen, this is the extent to which something, this is what needs to happen, and yada, yada, yada. So I would think of it that way. I think
The
that you would have.
But there's something to be said that there could be a blessing in disguise, so to speak, in terms of increased like like after 9/11, the TSA and the security at airports were increased. You could say that was a in general
Yeah,
positive in the sense that they're making sure that deadly
but those
substances are not arriving in the
those are the
plane.
sorts of things that you can still keep around.
Okay.
I mean, obviously not every single thing that happens. I'm just saying you could expose the level of corruption inside of the government in a way that was never really possible before. If you found
Okay.
out that no, this actually was true, then you could just say, look at, we need to get rid of all these bureaucracies because this is the bureaucracy that cares only about condensing and consolidating power that we just don't need, that they're willing to do anything.
So yeah, I understand where you're coming from now, and then I would bring up this fact. Yes, you can spin it, especially to make yourself look like a good candidate. Doesn't necessarily guarantee you'll win the presidency. But one thing that will factually happen is the amount of people who will hate the government will be increasing tenfold. And I think
Yes.
something else to consider as well, not only did the government lie to the people, but the government killed their own people.
Yes. That is the other side. That's the other side of the coin that is certainly bound to happen. That's why I said you could also just have 1776 again, where everybody like talk about like people were upset with January 6th. Like if it came out today, people would know forever July 27th. Like forever that would go down in history. The level of rioting and destruction that would happen
Yeah, it
would
would go
be
even 100%. It would go even further. Like if they're willing to do January 6th, if they found out that the government actually did this and that they had killed their own people for this agenda, yeah, the amount of rioting and the amount of
yeah.
violence that could cause, and who to say
Oh
that the
yeah.
government, the people, will ever trust the government again? I think there's too many risk factors. And if I'm being honest, oh, people are gonna hate this. But we're just talking. We're just talking as leaders, right? We're just talking. I think if I found out, honestly, I don't think I would tell the people. I think it would just be too damaging. And this is one of those things that I said before. This is one of those things where it's best to keep people ignorant to protect them from themselves. I think this is just one of those scenarios, and it would just be better overall for the country if we because also another aspect of it, if they started getting violent, then the government's gonna start stacking up. They're gonna start
The
attacking the
thing is,
people.
that is a possibility. Unless you were able to so swiftly and forcefully take over the reins of power.
But one individual
There's
would never be able to do that in our government.
no, but never mind. But yeah, there would be ways in which the storming of the Capitol, the complete overtaking of all avenues of the government, that you would effectively be able to take control. Whether or not one person then became like, I'm saying like the breakdown of communication. If you could do it before communications were sent out effectively, like there's ways that you could mitigate the probability of a legitimate attack force coming back. But now I just sound like a crazy person who's trying to overthrow the government, and so
Yeah,
now the Secret Service is
that's
going
what
to
you would
start.
have to do in
Yeah,
order to fix everything.
yes,
You would have to take restructure the government, and then that would be
oh yeah.
dangerous too. So it's like, yeah, it's just too risky. It's too damaging, and I don't think I would tell the people. Sorry, people, but that's just you just gotta think logically. Like, if you think that you would be violent, more than likely, like everybody else that you know would be violent. So it's just too risky.
Yeah.
It's probably not something we should do. Um, like, but it's crazy. But just see about that, all the situations where with cops and black people, right? The amount of riots and protests and violent riots that happen after some of those, like, this is at a different scale. It's just too risky to reveal that information. But I definitely, what I would do is I would hold that information over so many people's heads, and definitely kind of hold that
That's how
power.
you get on the hit. That's how you get on the Clinton hit list.
Oh, true. Oh,
So
they're gonna try to take me out, bro. I'm about to get a sniper. Oh, that's
I guess
another conspiracy.
the only way for us to know is if one of us becomes president.
True. The only, I guess,
Adele Lewis, 2024.
the only conspiracy that I would be willing to tell the people, if like that could potentially destroy the people's trust in the government, is if it was true that there was like the government was assassinating presidents or assassinating key political key figures like JFK and Martin Luther King. If that was true, I would definitely out the government, 100%. At that point, there's evil, so it's
Why
like we get them
that
out of here.
over? That's one U.S. citizen versus like 100 odd U.S. citizens.
Yeah, but this time they're like, you know, getting away key figures. You know what I'm saying? It's a little different for me, man. These
The
are
World Trade Towers
hey man,
destroyed the U. I'm just saying. I
hey
don't see the
man.
difference there.
I guess the difference for me would be that obviously that situation was bad for sure. Well, I think the level is a little different for me because it's actively trying to control the way the America progresses, right? So that's kind of how I say it, because when you kill leaders, that's like, okay, they're doing things that I don't want them to do, then that means that they're trying to control the way that the country itself is supposed to be moving forward, and I think that's another level. That's another level of manipulation. A next level of manipulation that I think that at that point we should kind of just restructure the government or get rid of the FBI completely, like you said.
I think we should disband the FBI. My candidate that I like wants to disband the FBI.
Oh, Vivek, is it him?
Vivek, yeah.
Vivek. Well, you better hope that DeSantis keeps on destroying himself and Trump goes to jail. Then he could win the Republican primary.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think, unfortunately, as much as I like Vivek, I don't know how much of a shot he truly has. I would totally be down to see him on a ticket with somebody else, like Trump or chief of staff or something like
Oh,
that.
you want
And then he'd
Trump to
have,
go back, come back as
I
president?
don't, I don't, but I think this is a whole nother topic we could get into.
He could
But
join RFK's staff because RFK says he's a Democrat, but he's not a Democrat, bro. He's
he is
not.
a Democrat. Yes.
He's not. I'll see when I believe it. He's too conservative conspiracy for me. For him
The
to be a
only
Democrat.
conservative thing that he has is he's an anti-COVID vax.
And
Every other
he
policy he
thinks the
has is
FBI
Democrat.
killed JFK too. Want to get
Well,
rid of the
yeah.
FBI and anti-vax? That's two big conservative conspiracy things.
Yeah, but he's pro-abortion. He's pro all the other things.
I guess it's a scale. He might scale 51. I would have to look into it. 51-49. It's a big scale. Pro-abortion.
Because he
Me.
doesn't have, like I was talking about the last time with you and Paul, conservatives right now, they're not concerned primarily with political policies. They are concerned with values. They want a return to conservative values, and so their candidates have to have conservative values. This
Is
is why
RFK religious?
I don't
He
think so.
so he's
I mean,
pro-abortion.
he
Is there
might be
anything
nominally
else?
religious. He might be nominally religious. I haven't looked thoroughly into all of his policies. I know he is a Democrat by every standard when it comes to all the other things. He's just a quote unquote classical Democrat, a Democrat of the '60s or whatever.
Well,
Just like
other than the
he shares
pro-abortion
all the
stuff,
values. He
I
has all
don't
the
know what other
values that
values.
JFK had. Yeah, he had all the other values that JFK has.
Was JFK
Who he was a Democrat.
anti-FBI, anti-COVID?
Well, no, he was a Democrat. He had the same policies that JFK has, who was a Democrat from the 60s. So, of course, they're not going to believe in transing people because that's a super radical modern belief, like of the last 15 minutes in human history.
I would have to look into everything he put out to really see because, like, sure you could say classical Democrat, but when it comes down to it, this you have to go. I mean, at this point, you have to go with what's currently showing, and other than I guess pro-abortion, is Trump pro-abortion or anti? I don't think is he.
He's anti-abortion.
Is he?
He
I
he
feel like he had
ran
many abortions though in his
no
life.
well, he didn't have any abortions.
Oh, true, true, true.
He might have paid for some
I'm
abortions.
sure. Yeah, that's what I'm
No,
saying. I'm
no,
sure he
no.
paid for people.
This is what I was about to say. Right. This is why I don't like Trump for my first pick. If he's the candidate, he's the candidate. But I am not convinced that he legitimately shares my values because up until 2016, he was a Democrat. And then he found it politically beneficial to run as a Republican. This is why I much favor DeSantis and or Vivek because they, as by every measure that I can find, they generally or rather genuinely believe in those values. Trump does not. I at least I don't. Maybe he had a change of heart, but
But
even
that's
now, like you were about to say, he's rolled back a little bit on his anti-abortion stance. He's saying that there should be, abortion up until a certain amount, which he did not run on in 2016 or 2020. He was so he's rolled back on some of the stuff. He's rolled back on some of his LGBT policies, while the other ones are doubling down. So
yeah, that's kind of like I guess I see RFK like a Trump in the sense.
yes,
That's
he's
probably
a
why.
Democrat Trump.
Yeah, that's kind of like why I'm like not super convinced, but at the same time, Like the classical Democrat stuff, I agree with, and I agree with like DeSantis definitely being more classical conservative versus something like
Yeah,
Trump. But
this is one of the things.
it's interesting because moving forward, if we have people who are towing the line, like RFK and Trump, what is that? There's a question on what that says about our current society.
Well, there's a guy. Um, I could speak to this more on the side of Trump than I can um
RFK.
RFK because I don't know as much about RFK. But there's a guy, a anthropologist and philosopher, I guess you call him, called Rene Girard, and he says a culture in decline can only make anti-heroes. And by every measure, Trump is an anti-hero. You know, he's crass, he's vulgar, he does things in a sly, backward manner. He's effective, right? He's very effective in what he does. Um, but by almost every measure, he's an anti-hero. You know, he's crass, he says all the bad things, he does the naughty things, and he doesn't apologize for it. And I think that is a problem, is that we can only, and then I think RFK kind of falls along those same lines. I think he's more diplomatic than Trump is, but in many ways he's the Democrat version of Trump because Trump came back and went in 2016, 2020, was promoting very radical old ideas from the past that we would have said those are antiquated, and RFK is doing the same thing on the Democratic side, which is why everybody thinks, oh, he's a Republican, because he's pushing backwards to old values, which is seen as a conservative thing, right? Because it's the progressive left, the conservative right. So that's why people are perceiving RFK as, oh, like, I remember when he announced his candidacy, I said something to Paul, and Paul goes, oh, he's running Democrat because he's promoting a form of conservatism, but a conservatism on the Democrat platform, which is why he's still a Democrat because he doesn't share the inherent values that I share. I would never vote for him.
Yeah, we're gonna be in a very interesting next election, and the last couple elections were some interesting candidates, right? We had Trump Hillary, then we had Trump Biden. Now are the four more popular ones as of right now. We don't know if it'll change by election time, but Trump, DeSantis, Biden, and RFK. I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
I think.
we need someone to
Yeah,
shake it
I
up.
we could do a whole podcast. I think on, especially with Paul on, we could do a whole podcast on our nominees.
Yeah, I'm saving that podcast episode once we get closer to election time and figure out what one will they be the four primary nominees moving forward. As of right now, they're the most popular one, but you never know. There could be like this random guy. Last year Bernie was super popular. Then Biden
If
came out.
somehow they could knock down Trump's ratings, if somebody could really get to like the 20s, 30s, because I don't think DeSantis has broke 20s. But if Vivek or DeSantis himself could get up into the 30% ranges, then I think there might be a shot at dethroning Trump. But he's just so far ahead right now, uh, con- especially for the Republican ballot. But who knows if somebody could get enough third party support, or if an RFK could really challenge Biden. If Biden, maybe he keels over in the next couple months, you never
Which
know,
is also
you know,
possible. Then we're gonna have
which is
to
also possible.
have Kamala Harris run as president.
Yeah, I don't think she. Well, I don't know if she'd run. I don't know if she could get elected.
I think. I mean, I think she probably would run. Would she get
You
elected?
do?
Hell no. She's definitely not winning. Yeah, I think she definitely would. I am 100% think that one of the things behind Kamala is she wants to be in power. That's
Oh
what it
yeah.
seems to me.
Oh
And
yeah.
it at the very least helps her case if she took over for Biden after maybe he croaks one and then tries to go for a re-election as an official president. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see. But that's all we got for today. You know, we kind of waffled for a little bit, but you know, it was a little fun episode as we talked about something important at the very least, in the sense that there is value in keeping government secrets, even government conspiracies. That for the most part, if you're being honest with yourself, the people probably shouldn't know. You know, you don't want to destroy what you got going on. You don't want to wake up every day, go to work, you know, get some McDonald's, maybe come back, you know, throw on some video games, play some Call of Duty or 2K, maybe go on YouTube or watch some streaming service on that. There's so much, you know, it may be a boring life, but bro, this boring life is so blissful and so easy. You don't want to stray away from that, you know. So we gotta keep things how they are for now and constantly improve our current system and make sure that other potential bad stuff doesn't happen in the future. So that's all we got for today. Hope you guys enjoyed per usual. We'll be back, of course. Y'all have a good one. Rate it 5 stars. Take